Welcome to another masterclass here at Mind for All Seasons. I'm really excited about today's class because we have special guest Evan Messman, who is an expert through his own experience and then through 30 years plus of professional work in terms of the mindset around our eating and a lot of the choices that we make. And so he brings a unique perspective to the table. I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know Evan and learning more about what he does to help people all over the country improve their ability to make decisions and to deal with some of the ins and outs of everyday situations like what am I going to eat for dinner and how's that going to affect me? So I'm excited for all of us to learn from Evan. And I hope those of you that are here live will drop any questions that you have in the chat as we go. And Evan's prepared a presentation that is both informative and interactive, so I'm excited about that. Evan, I'll hand it off to your capable hands, and I'll let you introduce your story a little bit more. You have quite a story that brought you to this, and
Sure.
we look forward to the journey with you today.
Well, thank you. I'm grateful that you invited me on. Uh, I'm glad to be here, and I do want to let you guys know that I love interaction. So please take yourself off mute. I will be doing a slide presentation or PowerPoint. It will be actually Canva. But it really makes a difference when I can get input from you guys. Just to introduce myself, I am a leadership coach disguised as a nutritionist. I found very early on that the decisions that we make every day either course correct us or take us down a path that leads us astray. And the root cause is in the decision, in that moment before the decision, the pause that we take. And I've spent 30 years coming to that conclusion. I started as a nutritionist, but my first client was myself. I was nicknamed Heavy Evie as a kid and very sickly kid. And I decided one day after getting bullied, being called that wonderful name, Heavy Evie, and being picked last for the sports teams and just seeing 4 years in the future where I might be because my brother was also overweight, that was not the trajectory I wanted to be on. And I looked in the mirror and said, you know what? Nobody can do this but me. And I decided to make some simple changes that led to a transformation over a summer. They were just habit changes, like putting my fork down between plates and stopping when I was satisfied and modifying some of the things that I'm eating. And what I found was that it was really this just making the commitment to making those small changes. And I've been reverse engineering that ever since. So I went to school, got a degree in nutrition. I have a master's in clinical nutrition, registered dietitian, diabetes educator. I want to learn it all. I wanted all the pieces of the puzzle. I became a personal trainer, and I also, while I was going for my master's, and then I wanted to understand critical care, so I became a nutrition support
Support.
dietitian. I even was an adjunct professor for 10 years teaching nutrition and performance and nutrition and disease because I wanted to learn it all. And what I realized is that I only had a few pieces of the puzzle. I was always amazed by all these people out there, all these doctors and experts that had all these pieces of the puzzle. And what I realized is they didn't. They were just charlatans selling half truths and making money. I just wanted to find out, well, what is going on? And that's really what we're going to talk about today. It's really about, I call the presentation Becoming Shatterproof because I've been through many iterations in life. And I find that the most important thing is not what you eat, it's not how you eat it, it's really why you eat the things that you eat. And just to continue with that trajectory, in my life, I was in private practice, loving what I was doing, working in the hospital also. And then I got recruited by a startup that was a wellness product, a wellness company that wanted to deliver its product via the internet. Because I had this unique approach, because I just did not buy into what was out there, I said, there must be a better way. They loved it and they wanted to digitize it. Well, I went public on 9/11 with that company, 2001 in Cantor Fitzgerald. I went from hero to zero and I pivoted into corporate America because there was nothing else. I couldn't go back to doing what I was doing before. And that led me into the wonderful world of corporate sales and medical devices and leadership, and also learning the one thing about corporate America: it sucks the joy out of everything you do. And luckily, when COVID hit, it gave me the opportunity to come back to doing what I love doing. But I found that it was just a tiny seed left of it, left in my heart there. When I went to clean out the attic during COVID, I found everything I'd been working on with that wellness program in my private practice, and I couldn't believe that I had created that. And now I've far surpassed that with what I've created, and that's what I want to share with you today. So, what do I mean by becoming uh, shatterproof? Does anybody understand the concept of becoming shatterproof? Have they ever heard it before? So, what does shatterproof mean? It means let's say you're a doll and you're made of glass. I hit you, boom, and you shatter. But if you're, let's say, a metalloid doll, I hit you and you dent. But what if you're made of cast iron and I hit you and I shake, but I'm undamaged. The metal that cast iron doll is undamaged. That's really what we're working on. It's becoming shatterproof. It's realizing no matter what happens, it's how quickly you recover. And when I grew up, I was shattered. I was not shatterproof. I was a very sickly kid. I was constantly dealing with not being able to stay awake because I had hypoglycemia and I was sick all the time. My first year of life, I was in an oxygen tent. I stopped breathing. So I had to figure out not just how to get healthy. I had to really get out of being so sickly into thriving. I really had to find a way through that. And I find that when I was in corporate America, that the business owners and leaders looked really great when they were in front of audiences. But when it came time to make decisions at home, they came home. It's that moment, that wonderful hour between like 8, 9, 10 o'clock. They would open the refrigerator and they would tell me that, Lament, I wanted something. I wasn't hungry, but I needed to eat something. I needed something. And it was trying to understand where that happened, where you had this incredible agency, leading people, running a company, making these crazy decisions, and then, wow, can't come home and decide what to eat. There's a little disconnect there. Don't you agree? Can anybody relate to that?
Evan, I love that you're bringing this up because just a few days ago, I was talking to someone who was incredibly successful in everyday life. But when I was asking him more about routines and what was leading to things that we had actually identified in blood work, he said, well, probably the biggest driver is that at about 9 o'clock at night when I'm trying to unwind, my go-to is to grab a big bowl of sugary cereal and pour the milk over it, and there I go. And so even the picture that you have here is bringing me back to exactly what I was seeing in my mind when I was talking to this person.
I love it. Um, a little bit about me. I've told you my story. I am a leadership coach and a public speaker. I am the chief gratitude officer of Pro Attitudes, which is a leadership coaching business, but I work with leaders who've climbed the ladder to success, but they left their health on the bottom rung because they thought they had to. And what I do is I help take them back up to the top of the rung before they fall off the ladder altogether. And I'm also the founder of Moment, which is a new beta app. It's an app that's in beta testing right now. What it is it helps you make decisions at the moment to create more agency, more leadership. And I've been doing this for over 30 years. Again, that 20-year stint in corporate America, which did make a huge difference in sales, management, and leadership in really big companies like Roche, 3M, and Convatec. But all of that has helped me understand that eating is the first decision and the most common decision that people make every day. But nobody eats from a pyramid. Remember the food pyramid? Even the new food pyramid where they flipped it upside down, the old pyramid wasn't broken. You know what the problem was? Anybody? What was the problem with the pyramid? Nobody eats from a pyramid.
Yeah, nobody does that.
They eat
Yeah.
from a plate. So I created this system over 30 years ago called rounding your plate. Put the food on the plate, map it out. And that's what I've been using. But on the plate, what you put on your plate determines whether you're going to be healthy or not. And when I talk about, like you mentioned that you're the person you were working with at 9 o'clock at night, they're having a bowl of cereal and
Mhm.
milk. Well, there are ways to change that. So it's not the actual behavior, it's the fact that they need some relief at 9 o'clock at night because what they've been doing all day has led them to a point where they go, I need a release. I want something that's going to unplug me or help me to disconnect from these uncomfortable feelings. I need comfort, right? You're searching for comfort. Very much like me when I deal with, and I'll show you this picture, but to me, it is about this voice in your head. Everybody has a voice in their head that they talk to every day. It's themselves. And that voice, by default, is negative. If we don't take charge of that voice, it will always default about 75% of the time to negative. And I've labeled it, calling it the inner critic. And it really wears a reasonable mask because it'll tell you at 9 o'clock, like I'm sure your client will tell you, you've earned this, you deserve this at 9 o'clock. But yet afterwards, how do you feel? The inner critic takes care of both being the hero and also being the villain and being the victim. It keeps you in this drama triangle. And what I've done, I used to have an inner critic that was 6 feet tall, and I keep him up here on the shelf just to remind me. I've got him down to about 8.5 inches. Can everybody see that? And what I and you know that's Darth Vader, yes, but he's my friend. I know that he's there to protect me, but he does a really lousy job. What I've done is I've developed my inner coach. That's that inner wisdom that we all have, that we forget about. It's a whisper sometimes, and it's only a whisper because the inner critic has a roar to it if you don't tame it. And that's what I'm going to teach you how to do. And that's how you become shatterproof. Now, when I would finish work, especially like on Friday night, I would sit down at a dinner table and I would eat the whole bread basket. Um, and a lot of it was because during the week I was saying yes, 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 yes to everybody except me. And that means I was saying no to me and yes to everybody else. And that is not the way to live your life. It's not sustainable. But I did it for a reason because my inner critic was saying, I need to please people. I'm a harmony enthusiast. It's one of my inner critics. And that means I've got to keep harmony with everybody. Um, and it doesn't serve me, though, me personally, but it's the way that I was programmed by the life that I lived, how I was brought up, and how I learned how to create that identity to survive as a child. But that child identity was created simply because of the limitations of, and the best, they did the best they could, but the limitations of my parents and my circumstances. But we don't have control over our circumstances, do we? But we do
No,
have control over how we handle it. So,
yes.
right. So part of this is about understanding that if you let the inner critics control the dialogue, it's going to put you in this little box and you're going to become what everybody wants you to be. Got that perfect suit on and you got your computer, everything, you become a Ken doll. Okay. That is not the goal in life. The goal is not to take the blue pill, it's to take the red pill. We're not in the matrix here, but I want you to think about it. We've got to get off the treadmill. Think about this treadmill. That's the default. We are constantly waking up every day and doing the same thing over and over again because our brains are prediction machines. What if you push the button instead of just doing automatically what you did yesterday and the day before? You just chose to do something different. Amazing things start to happen when you just focus on becoming aware of this process, and it's there for a reason. It's there because we are dual beings. We are humans, but we also have a higher level, this inner physician side of us, I like it, however you want to describe it, that inner coach in you. I like to consider that that's your spiritual side. Our
Right.
spirits are hardwired for growth. They're
Mhm.
hardwired for adversity, but our human brains are hardwired for safety, comfort zone. Well, this duality, this ability to manage both of these is, I think, meant. It was designed. It's actually divine design for us to actually become the person we want to become, or we're destined to become. So first step is to stop listening to those inner critics in your head. And yes, there's 10 of them. So there's an awful lot of cacophony going up there. It's like a whole boardroom. But you don't want that inner critic to be the CEO of your life. What we want is the inner coach to take charge. And the how come? Because there's a cost for letting that voice be in charge. There'll be self-doubt. You'll try to do things your way because your way is the best way. Nobody can really do it better than you. That's the perfectionism that comes out. The negative self talk leads to rumination. It actually reduces your ability to make a choice, your ability to be effective, and it takes more time to make decisions in business, whether you're working with a team or you're working in your own business. It literally will exhaust you. It is physically, mentally exhausting to allow that inner critic to be in charge. It leads to burnout. And what's the consequence or the symptom of the inner critic being in charge? Eating habits. The eating habits that do not really align with being a leader or taking charge. And then you also have those body issue images because you can look in the mirror no matter what you see. You're never going to be satisfied because you're always looking at how critical through that critical lens. So these are some of the terms you might hear the inner critic say. I like to make it so that you can hear it yourself. You might have heard in your head sometimes, this happened to me yesterday. I'm working on the moment, which the moment is my app. And I should have figured this prompt out by now. And it gets fed by my partner, my wife, because she's challenging me on other things, but not in a negative way. She's just concerned, right? Like, why is it still broken? Why is this not working? And I'm like, I should have figured this out by now. Or my inner coach might say, you know what? You're not there yet, but if you didn't do what you've done up till now, you wouldn't be able to have that conversation now. Another thing your inner critic might say is, "Oh, I just don't have time to do this. I should be doing something else instead of listening to Evan." Or, I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to go shopping. I don't have time to buy healthy food and eat healthy. I just don't have time. And we all have the same 24 hours, by the way. Okay. And what about the other one in there that's like the comfort seeker that's afraid of conflict? You're always going to mess this up, right? Or the vigilant victim, I call it. Always afraid that they're going to mess up or there's going to be a tragedy around every corner. So I talked a little bit about this survival mechanism. That's the inner critic of being in this fight or flight response that keeps you in the comfort zone. And we were designed that way. We evolved. If you think about the caveman 100,000 years ago, those cavemen that went out and looked at the sunrise because, oh, it's so beautiful, before considering whether they were at risk, they're not in the gene pool anymore because they got eaten by the tiger or got attacked by the warring tribe that was hiding outside, waiting for him to come out, got him, or the weather, the bad weather. There's so many reasons that we needed to protect ourselves with this fight or flight response, but that was 100,000 years ago. It's still there, but we can easily turn it off by knowing we're safe. And the cavemen typically did. It would fight the tiger, would fight the warring tribe, or it would deal with the weather, and then they could turn off that stress response. But today, can you turn it off between everything that's going on the news, your emails, your phone calls? The world is getting so much smaller. It's constantly popping up the texts that are coming up, right? It is the world, the sky is falling. And we are constantly in this fight or flight response, whether we want to or not. So intentionally, we need to learn how to filter it and realize that if we're going to listen to that fight or flight response, we're going to have to stay in our comfort zone. The only way to get out of the comfort zone is to push past that fear, realize it's not what happens, it's how I handle it, and realize that, hey, that's where the magic happens. It's outside the comfort zone. It's there to protect you. That's great. But guess what? It's keeping you stuck. So what are you supposed to do? Well, when your inner critic is running the show, we don't want you pushing harder. I don't want you burning out faster. I don't want you to get lost with the noise. We have to listen to the signal. Now, the signal is coming from the inner critic because it's telling you, I'm doing this. And you go, well, why are you doing this? What are you protecting me from? The perfectionist maestro is getting you to be perfect. It's afraid of making a mistake. The wanderlust adventurer can't be comfortable being in one place in the present. So it's constantly looking for other things to do. The overdrive samurai cannot be satisfied with success internally. It always has to be the external win, and never satisfied with it. On to the next, never ever feeling a sense of worth. The logic mastermind is afraid of emotions, doesn't want any emotions involved at all. Think of Spock, right? It's just illogical to allow the emotions in. But we have to allow that, right? To live is to really understand our intuition and our gut. The comfort seeker I talked about, that was part of me, is being afraid of conflict. And the detail deacon is like the perfectionist maestro, but they're so focused on the details, they miss out on the vision, the big picture. So, whoops, how do we become shatterproof? This is the shift. When you hear the noise, which would be the inner critic, that the negative ninny that in that meatloaf of upstairs here, what we want to do is recognize it, that it's negative. We all know what a negative voice sounds like, right? And then we need to reframe it. And then we need to replace it. And that is the simple process that I use with my clients. Identify that it's the inner critic, it's not serving you anymore. Reframe it by saying, instead of you can't, you could say, well, what if it does happen? What if I can do this? It's looking at it and reframing it through the lens of curiosity, courage, compassion, creativeness. Those are all, I like to call them the C letters of your inner critic. I mean, your inner coach. And then we replace those old ways of thinking with the new ones. Those new neural pathways, they take time. You've got to retread those grooves. So now what I want to do is I want to introduce you to, would you like to meet your inner coach? Would you
Sounds
like to
good.
turn off the inner critic? Okay, so really simple. Everybody, I want you putting your feet on the floor, and I want you to just be aware right now of all 10 toes. And I want you to feel your elbows on either your lap or on your armrests. And I want you to sink into your chair and just notice all the touch points between your thighs and your buttocks and your back. And I want you to close down your eyes right now. And I want you to just take a sip of breath in through your nose. Now that's to fill your lungs. Now I want you to expand your rib cage by taking a second sip in. Pause on top, and now open your mouth and just blow out. Nice long breath out, and then pause on the bottom. Okay, we're going to do that again. Again, as you're doing that, I just want you to be aware of the weight of your legs under, like you're under your feet. The floor is supporting you, and the seat is supporting you. Take 2 sips of breath in, and blow out. Okay, one more, and blow out. And just be present. Just then, now keep your eyes closed and just be aware now of the natural rhythm of your breath, and just be curious. Just notice the air going in and out. And as the air goes in and out, now I want you to notice as the air goes in, it's cool and dry. And as you exhale through your nose, you notice it's warmer and it's moister. I just want you to notice everything. Put all your attention on your breath. Well, as you exhale, each exhale, you're just letting go, melting into the chair. And I want you to slowly open your eyes. Don't focus on any one thing and tell me what you feel. Some of you are on mute. Remember, I said, come off
Just
mute.
just push. I muted everybody so that we had a real clean recording, but
Oh,
you can just
great.
press
Okay.
down your space bar and it'll unmute you.
Yeah.
So, what do you
Um,
feel?
Relaxed.
Mm-hmm. You feel any tingling in your fingers?
No.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
that's something that if you become more aware as you do this, what you're doing is you're oxygenating your body because you just switched from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. You gave your body physiologically permission to switch. And that switch was because the vagus nerve travels through your diaphragm. And when you do this kind of breathing, it's designed to physiologically flip the switch off of stress. Now, when you turn the switch off of stress, it's kind of like turning the high on your stove to down completely. But if the water's boiling, it's going to take a long time for the water to come down to right to the room temperature. So understand that this is something you need to do. I call it pattern interrupts, to do it over and over again, to constantly create an interruption in that neural pathway that you use that takes you to the inner critic. And now you've just met your inner coach. Being in that stress relaxation, that rest digest approach will make such a difference. And there are so many different ways to do it. Breath work is one way. There's also sensory command exercises. There's meditation and other mindfulness exercises. I like to use non-sleep deep breaths. There's imagery. There's all these wonderful little techniques that work. But the important thing is to bring the boil down. And the way that I like to explain it to people, when you think about water boiling, the water is boiling. You cannot see your face in the reflection. But once you turn the boil down, suddenly everything becomes clear. And now you can see. So it creates clarity when you allow yourself to see through that lens of the inner coach instead of the inner critic.
That was actually a word that I was going to use to describe the feeling I had was clarity. So it's
Wonderful.
interesting you say that.
Great. Then it's working. Excellent. So when you listen to your inner coach, your whole world will change. I lived in corporate America for 20 years, and by default, my inner critic was very well developed. No matter how much I had worked on meditation and such, but the work that I've done in the last 5 years with my business has taught me how to really tame that inner critic. And it's amazing when you follow a specific routine or ritual every day and you learn not just to bring the boil down, but to bring it to like completely down, how much more you can be productive in the day, how much more joy. This is more important for me. I love to say to people, what I do helps people have more mojo, more moments of spontaneous joy. Why? Because when you do the breath work and you slow things down, you suddenly start living in the precious present. You're no longer focusing on the fear of the future or the regret of the past. And that's really the goal. So I'm going to ask you some questions, and these are rhetorical, but you can answer if you'd like. When in your day do you feel that the noise gets the loudest? And what's usually trying to stop you? What is it trying to stop you from doing? Anybody have a specific time of day when the noise in their head, the stress level gets loudest?
For me, it's late at night when I'm getting ready to go to bed and I'm trying to tone everything down. Then all of a sudden it gets real loud.
Mm-hmm. That's a big one for a lot of people. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody
Yeah,
else?
yeah, the same thing. Go to bed and sit there and think of a dozen things I need to get done.
Oh, it's just no fun. Wait, and what about waking up in the middle of the night and
Oh,
you just
yeah.
can't turn it off?
No,
Yeah, yeah.
can't. Yeah.
And I'll tell you that sleep is the first and most important component of health and wellness that I focus on, that I make sure that everyone's getting a proper night's sleep. And when they're not, it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just a great, it's a signal for me that that's what I need to work on, especially if you're using medication. A lot of people will use medication to sleep or alcohol to sleep, or they just don't have a ritual for sleep. Okay.
This ties in nicely to one of our recent master classes with Dr. Nick Wignall, a clinical psychologist who was talking about insomnia. And he was discussing the idea that insomnia is not a sleeping disorder, it's an anxiety issue. And when the mind is revving up at night with all these things that we could do or should do, and the inner critic is firmly at the podium, clearly that is exactly what you're talking about, Evan. That it's sympathetic nervous system dominance, and
Mm-hmm.
and we're revved up with anxiety.
Does anybody have a really, besides Eric, because he knows the answer to this, have a definition for themselves or they learned about this? What is anxiety? The
I've
definition of anxiety for you.
I've heard it described as living in the trying to live in the future.
Mm-hmm. There's no right or wrong answer, but go ahead. Anybody else?
Yeah, for me, I think it's planning out the future and knowing that I'm not going to succeed.
Okay. So that's also fear of the future. Okay. Anybody else? I like to define it as it's the fear that you have without action leads to anxiety. So, in the fear is a signal. Fear is not a good thing. Fear is not a bad thing. But if you think about your comfort zone as this core circle, right outside that circle is fear. And fear is a signal. But what are you afraid of? The inner critic saying, uh-oh, I can't predict what's going to happen next. I'm afraid. Get back in what's predictable, in your comfort zone, that comfortable little prison of just doing the same thing over and over again. But what's outside the fear zone? What's outside of that fear zone? It's a learning zone. It's unpredictable, which means you need to learn. Everything needs to slow down, but your monkey mind, that the human brain is saying, but wait a second, I need to protect you. Well, yeah, because it's new. So everything starts to slow down. But you also, I call it the suck zone, but it's the learning zone. The suck zone because it's having difficult conversations with people. It's learning new skills that you're going to fail at or suck at. And it's just doing things that are so new and uncomfortable to you. And then what happens outside the learning zone? What's the next zone outside of that? If you at it, it's called the growth zone. That's where the magic happens. So, what I want you to realize is that if your inner coach had one sentence to reframe that noise, what would it say? I'll give it to you, but I want to see if anybody has something. Instead of listening to that noise, like Delby, of hearing that in the when you wake up in the middle of the night and you're listening to that voice saying you're going to fail. What would the inner coach say? Compassion, curiosity, calm, conscientious, creative. What would the inner coach say?
Slow down.
Look how far you've come. If you don't have a stumbling block, anybody could do this. That by having these thoughts and feelings, it means, guess what? You're in the learning zone. That's a signal that you're in the right place instead of saying, oh my God, I'm outside my comfort zone. Oh, wait, I'm in the learning zone. And what's outside the learning zone? The growth zone. So if you use the fear as fuel, That's the reframe. That to me really helps calm the noise down.
Evan,
Well,
I think that in a lot of ways, there's discomfort in the growth zone because
oh,
growing
yeah.
is hard. And
Hmm.
I think the inner critic often says, what if? And it's the what ifs that eat us for lunch.
Oh, you went on mute. I don't know how that. Yeah.
Uh, the the inner coach, I think, says maybe it's possible. If the inner critic says, "Well, what if this happens? What if that?" So we're held hostage by the past and we're afraid about the future. And when we have the courage to say maybe and to live a
Yeah.
little bit in the gray and to allow ourselves to learn through that hard work, I think that moves us forward.
Hmm. Just, I love that. Does anybody know David Goggins? David Goggins is a man. He's an inspirational, I mean, a motivational, excuse me, speaker, and he is an athlete. But he was 300 pounds when he was younger, and just a terrible student, really going to end up in prison and on drugs. And his father was alcoholic, his mother was a drug addict, and he really didn't have anyone to save him. And one day he just said, what if you decided in a different way, Eric? He said, what if you could succeed? Because when he was up on stage, people asked him, what do you do when you feel like you can't? Like you feel like a failure? And he said, when I'm out, he says, you don't think I still have those feelings? He says, it's not about those thoughts and feelings. I call those compulsions. What it is that your commitment becomes greater than your compulsions. If your commitment is down here and your compulsions are up here, compulsions will win. But what if you keep saying, just one more day? Okay, you can do this. You're one day closer. What if I succeed? Your future self's going to thank you for this. Now, all of a sudden, your commitment becomes greater than your compulsions. And that's the reframe that I'm looking for you, because what would change in your week if you trusted that voice that said that 1%, 5%, or 10% more? What would happen? And that is my presentation. So I want to thank you for having me.
Thank you, Evan.
And
Um,
now I just want to ask, what did you learn? And what are you going to do differently this week?
I think, first of all, Evan, it's really interesting to approach things like the mindset around eating as opposed to the behavior of eating itself.
Hmm.
So I love the perspective shift that you bring to this. And I'm curious to know, and maybe others are as well, how did you learn to recognize the language of your inner critic? As you pointed out earlier, the inner critic wears a reasonable mask,
Hmm.
which can make it harder to recognize. And it would be interesting to know a little bit more about your journey of starting to shift from the heavy label to, oh, I can now recognize the language of my inner critic. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I can, if I ramble, just stop me, because no one's ever asked that question. But when I was younger, it was those low moments that brought out the inner critic so loudly. But then the inner coach was a whisper that suddenly in the gut, it spoke to me. Or I started to listen to the signals that were out there. Um, a lot of times it's listening. I call it synchronicity, that when you listen to the universe, it provides you exactly what you need, but we won't listen. So we keep getting the same tests over and over again. When I started to do more meditation and more self awareness, meditation made a huge difference, but still not enough, because then I was quieting the mind. which was, I thought I couldn't meditate. I hear this from so many, including my wife. Like if I can get her to do, she actually looks forward to yoga nidras now. She's like, let's go do one. Where in the beginning was like, I can't. It is such a difficult thing sometimes to tame that voice in your head. But somebody taught me, and this to me is the most important thing, that if you have one thing you take away, that it's about the voice and the feelings. Those thoughts and feelings are not you. You're the witness to the thoughts and feelings. And that distinction gave me the ability to unblend my inner critics from my inner coach, because that's really the work. When you think about between stimulus and response, there's a space, right, to choose. That's Viktor Frankl's work. But I realized that a habit is automatic. There is no space. And so my job was to open this up and get people to look at, wow, you do have, when you stop and you look, there is the freedom to choose. But guess what? Each one of these is an inner critic that wants to keep you safe. And it has you locked in this habit. You can't pull apart. If you grab your fingers, you cannot pull apart. So I needed to first get people to become aware of the inner critics and unblend them, and then the space would open. And when I did that work, even when I was doing it with others, it was more for me. And then I did some work myself through positive intelligence with Shirzad Shamin's work. And then I did more work with yoga nidras, and I did more work with sensor command exercises, and more through just this self discovery of this. That is the self-awareness, is that first time you say, oh, I'm not the thought or feeling, I'm the witness. And then it takes a lifetime to master that. So that's a long answer to a short question. I hope that helped.
Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know if anyone else has questions or thoughts right now for Evan. Let's
I have
check
one.
in. Great.
Evan, you talked about having a hard time hearing that inner voice, your inner coach, and that the inner critic was much more strong when you were in the corporate world and you were busy and so forth. And then you kind of made this, I don't want to put words in your mouth, or maybe I misinterpret it, but you made a shift to where you became more in tune with your coach and were able to let some things go. Is that because when you worked in corporate America, the pace of the schedule or meeting other people's needs was such a strong driving force that it was hard for you to do that, or were there other variables involved? That's my first question. The second question is, how does someone who's in the corporate world, who may not be at a point in their life where they could stem out and be self-employed and slow things down, how do they calm those critics and hear that inner voice? Could you talk about those two things real quick?
Sure. Well, it's a great question. In corporate America, I was very self-aware. The problem that you have in corporate America is that you've got shareholders, you've got employees, and you've got leaders, right? You've got you want to make sure, and you have customers, right? You want the customers to be delighted. You want your employees to be satisfied, or employees to be motivated, and you want your shareholders to be satisfied. How many companies put all three of those on equal keel so that it's integrated? Very few. And I think that was the disconnect for me. I would hear one thing come out of the leaders, and I loved it. And then I would see another thing happening with behaviors. So it became to a point where, although I was developing my inner coach more and more, it became more and more difficult because I became an obstacle to other people. I would look at it as an opportunity, not an obstacle. And I took advantage of a lot of those opportunities and obstacles that came my way, and it helped me develop myself. So instead of looking at it as instead of my inner critic being fortified, what it ended up doing was helping me peel back layers of my inner critic and the protection that I was looking to protect myself from my own insecurities and my own shame from things that happened in the past of being human, right? But that's what happens is that inner critic gets developed. It was important to do the work on yourself. So if you are in that circumstance, the thing to focus on is realizing that bring it on. Like I remember I told you that adversity helps prepare you for being a better person, for being stronger, for being more of who you were meant to be. So when it becomes adversity, I take a deep breath, I get into my inner coach phase and I go, where's the gift or the opportunity here? When I fail, which I'm never not really failure, but when I make a mistake or I look at something and I go, why am I getting resistance? I look at resistance as a signal and go, let me take a break. Let me regroup. The worst thing that I used to do is I would wake up and just pretend that it didn't happen, whatever it was, and I would keep doing the same thing over and over again, just blindly imitating what I did the day before, like everybody else. And that doesn't work. That's when the inner critic takes charge. And I would have a ritual every day that would honor your inner coach. Because the idea here is that you need to become shatterproof. And you can become shatterproof by learning how to develop that inner coach so that no matter what happens, it becomes neither good nor bad. It's a gift or an opportunity.
Yeah,
Does that help?
it does help. I appreciate that. I wanted to ask a second question, totally unrelated. And it's that in our community, we have many individuals who participate who are assisted living center operators or owners or managers. And a large part of what we do is talk about healthy eating and healthy choices and so forth. And your discussion today was how an individual can calm the critic, listen to the coach, and make better decisions. How would you coach a coach? So, for example, the directors of the assisted living centers are constantly nudging and encouraging and coaching their clients to make different choices and better choices from a dietary standpoint. And sometimes that's hard. So we're not all as good as Evan are. And so what's a short coach to coach of how you would approach that?
I love your question. And what I would tell you is it's very simple. The approach that you're talking about is what is flawed in the healthcare field today. I used to hate when I was a dietitian and I would go up on the floor and I'd have to screen somebody and assess them. And let's say they had diabetes and I'd have to literally state, patient is non-compliant. No, patient's not non-compliant. What we're telling somebody who's a square hole that they have to fit into with a round peg. You need to empower the people that are there. It's about teaching those people there agency instead of compliance. And I used to love working. In the past, I wrote a book, The Habits of Healthy Eating, which it's on Amazon. And initially, I had licensed it to Oxford Health Plan, and I did presentations to their elderly. It was for seniors, so for COPD, for diabetes, for health, for hypertension, and I never talked about what you should and shouldn't do. I talked about how to build agency. And they don't know what agency means. So it was really about how do you learn how to slow things down and pause before you choose. And that is really the power of my program. That's where the Better Bite Buddy, which is what it's called now, but it's going to be the moment. It's in beta testing right now, but it will be an app that's out. It's a web-based app you can get to by typing betterbitebuddy.com. And it will help you do this, develop your inner coach, quiet your inner critic, and help you slow down the moment to take a pause and really align with what's truly important to you. It's simple, doesn't sound easy, but it is simple.
Yeah,
Do you
thank you
think
so much.
Sure.
Do you think, Evan, it's fair to say that in that moment, we're helping people learn to ask a question such as, what am I hiring this meal to do for me? What do I want it to do, or what am I
I,
hoping to
I
accomplish?
it's a great point to say, and this to me is not, it's not what happens, it's the value we assign to it.
Hmm.
A terrible tragedy happens. We assign it a tragedy, but out of that tragedy, um, something wonderful happens because suddenly people wake up to like, well, this is a problem we need to fix, and they fix it, whatever it might be. A volcano explodes and it kills a whole community, but yet all of a sudden the environment needed it to regrow, and it helped the environment regenerate itself, which it couldn't do without that. It's like a part of nature. So it's the value, it's neither good nor bad. It's the value we assign to it. So it's a great point that, people come home. How many people are on a diet during the week? But then they come home, it's Friday. Let me have a drink. Oh, we're going out to dinner tonight. And they blow it all on the weekend.
Hmm.
That's just one simple example. But how do you build responsibility, or what I like to call discipline? I call it the highest form of self love is self discipline. How do you build self discipline to make choices that aren't good or bad or on or off, but allow you more agency and allow your future self to say, thank you. Thanks for doing that. You just made a
Hmm.
deposit in our future self. That's really what I like to this is waking up that part of people that they look at the glass half empty. Look at the glass half full. Or do you just look at, hey, I'm grateful I have a glass?
Yeah.
That's my process is become, be strong, be grateful. Become is the transformation that people go through, or that they realize that all of this, the veils in front of them, they're already there. They're not broken. They just need to become who they were meant to be, not what they think they should be. Then the be strong is the growth mindset necessary to stay on the path and course correct. And gratitude keeps you great. It keeps you in the precious present. So that's the B3 way. And you guys can follow me on LinkedIn. I write about this every day. So there's great stuff you can read. I have a blog on my website, um, a LinkedIn newsletter, and my website also is Pro Attitudes. This is the name of my business, although it's still there, Pro Attitudes. So you can get it at proattitudes.com.
Thank you so much, Evan. I think my biggest takeaway is teach them agency, not compliance. That is deeply insightful, very powerful. Um, Thank you. I feel like we could talk all day and explore that topic of agency and how to develop greater agency. But I also know that you have an important appointment coming up, and I'm committed to getting you out on time. So,
I
on
appreciate that.
behalf of the whole community, both those who are here live and the hundreds of other people who aren't here with us but who will watch this on the replay, thank you so much for sharing your experience, your background, your insights, and what that means not only for helping us exercise greater agency in the choices we make in our relationship with food, but really with all the choices that we make in every aspect of our lives. This was great, and we're so thankful for your time.
I
So,
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
everybody, thanks for
Thank
coming. Have
you.
a wonderful rest of your day. We'll see you in another week for another masterclass here to Mind for All Seasons.